You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining me on the Newsmaker line is a gentleman who's going to be stepping back a bit from professional wrestling after a lengthy career. He is an Arizona original and a guy who's done a lot for the local wrestling scene here in Arizona. I have a lot of respect for Navajo Warrior. Are you with me, sir?
I'm here. Great to be here. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. And like I mentioned, I was at the show a few months ago. It was Looks That Kill, IZW, Impact Zone Wrestling, and you announced that you didn't use the word retirement, but you said you're going to be stepping back a little bit. Not to start out with, burying the lead, but what was the reason that you decided now's the time to start scaling back a little bit?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One being family, always takes first priority for me. And with my youngest doing more in her sport of boxing, it's taking up a lot of our time with her training and then her tournaments. And also just because 35 years, this will be 35 years of wrestling for the Navajo Warrior. So I figured it was time to scale it back. And like you said, I did not use the word retired because we never retire. There's going to be a day that they're going to call me and say, "Hey, we have this event that we'd like you to be on," and I'm not going to say, "Oh, I can't do it. I'm retired." I want to say, "Yeah, I'll be there."
Yeah, I mean, the joke I made was when Terry Funk finally passed away. That might have been his actual retirement, because up until then, he would not retire. He was the one everybody thinks of as, "I'm retired, but not really."
Exactly. So I can't use that word retirement.
Absolutely. Well, here we go. You have another match coming up real soon here at Monster. Impact Zone Wrestling presents Monster this February. I'll have the link and all that information in the description. You're going to be facing Frankie Kazarian in this match, another Southern California guy. He's a Southern California guy, I should say, SoCal Uncensored, if you will. What made him the right opponent for you guys, and how cool is it to be facing somebody that you had a hand in back in the day?
Well, so the whole idea behind this, I'm calling it the last mile, or the finishing up this year. So who better than to face than someone that I faced in the past and is making waves now as king of TNA, and Frankie Kazarian. Frankie was also part of the original IZW, coming in from Southern California and competing in that original group. So, you're going to see quite a few familiar faces in these last few matches that I'm going to have. So, I'm not going to blow any surprises, but right now Frankie's the first one, and we're going to bring it old school.
That sounds awesome. I think Frankie Kazarian and his wife Tracy Brooks, at one time, they might have held the record for being on my show the most amount of times, because they were just the most approachable human beings on the planet. So I'm happy to be seeing him in the state of Arizona. I haven't since Bound for Glory, 13, 14 years ago. So it's going to be good to see him back in Arizona.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be great to have him back in IZW. He, like I said, he was part of that original team that we would do our shows at the sets. We were at Bash on Ash and 10T, different venues in the Valley. And yeah, he was a big part of it.
Yeah, I told you in the messenger, and I'll mention it here. I mentioned it with other local interviews that I've done fairly recently. I was spoiled, and I didn't know how spoiled I was when I grew up in New Jersey, because I was literally just across the river. So in addition to, Madison Square Garden and the Meadowlands, there was also independent shows at high school gyms and anywhere else you can imagine. Jim Powers puts them on, Tito Santana, a whole lot of guys put on shows. Carluzzo, of course, everybody knows the Carluzzo shows. But I was so spoiled. And then I moved out here. and I moved out here in 2000. And it was like, where's the wrestling? You couldn't find anything going on. And you guys came up when I was in college, Impact Zone Wrestling, the sets. And it really kind of was a necessary thing to see what you guys did. How hard was it at that time to be one of the few standing independent promotions in the state of Arizona? And how has it changed with the huge expansion of our population over the past 15, 20 years?
So in the start, the whole reason I started Impact Zone Wrestling was because there was not lot of wrestling in the Valley. There was Western States Wrestling, and I was training wrestlers at the time, and so I was helping them get on the shows. And Western States Wrestling ran monthly, and they would run at the Coliseum in the Expo Hall at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And then for some reason, I think the ownership changed of the Coliseum, so they no longer wanted wrestling there. And so wrestling was dry. I gave it about a year. It was because Western States Wrestling, they kept saying, "Oh, we're going to find a new place. We're going to continue running." And I didn't want to run opposition to a company that was so good to me, so I waited, and then Gallo, who was Ghostwalker at the time, now GQ Gallo, Gabriel Gallo, and Hollywood Yates, and I decided, okay, it's been a year. Let's start running shows as Impact Zone Wrestling. So now it was not just a wrestling school anymore. Now we were going to start running events. So we started it up, and then it took off. Once we moved to the sets, that's when it really took off because we were running bi-weekly. And so with our contacts that we had with Rick Bassman and UPW and the different promotions in Southern California, we were getting people coming through. It was kind of like a proving ground. People wanted to come to IZW to be seen. And so we would take, guys like The Miz would come and wrestle for IZW, Kenny King, Brian Danielson, Sarah Del Rey, you name it. They all came through here. Davey Richards, so a lot of the talent that moved on to WWE that were up and coming at that time came through Impact Zone Wrestling. So it was great. And then to see how things have changed now, a lot of the wrestlers that I trained are now training wrestlers, and now they have their events that they run. So it went from being the only game in town, really, to now when we brought it back, there are a handful of promotions that are running, so it's been nice. It's been nice to see the growth, of professional wrestling in Arizona.
It is. I mean, the population has grown so much, and for the independent circuit to have been what it was. I mean, I know that, the population was a lot less then than it is now, but it is great to see that. You mentioned Gabriel Gallo. I had him on a couple months ago, and he mentioned that at the time he might not have understood some of the things you're saying, and now he's like, now I totally get it. So he really he tipped the cap to you, and he says, he'd like to be considered the kind of guy that you are, and helping train guys and helping give them the next step to make it into professional wrestling. I thought it was a real nice compliment that he gave you. And by the way, that might be the toughest son of a gun I've ever seen in my life.
Definitely.
When I saw him in a match, and he hit his chain onto his eye, and there was blood everywhere, and he did the match, and I'm starting to think they better call this match. And I'm kind of thinking, should I go pat somebody on the back and say, hey, you might want to check on him? But he finished that match, and I had his kid right behind me the whole match. It was so uncomfortable, but he's a tough son of a gun. I'll say that.
Oh, definitely. To go through that match, and then I saw some video of it, and I was like, that's insane. I personally, I would have said, yeah, we're not. It's over. I need to see if my eye is still there.
That's right. So I got to ask you a little bit about the old days, because, I'm 43. Yeah. I've been watching this stuff a long time, and I did my research leading into this interview, and I heard you mention some of the guys that when you had your early opportunities with WWE that you got to be around. First of all, coming from, a fan's perspective to ultimately being in the locker room of WWE in 1993 and seeing, the Nasty Boys and the Head Shrinkers and guys that, are larger than life in physical stature as well as how we think of them. What was it like to be in that locker room and see this whole business on that side of things from the inside?
It was intimidating is a good word to use. Quick little story. The very first time I was in the locker room at WWE was in 1993. And I was just told what time to show up to the arena, and that was it. Not who to check in with, not, nothing, so I'm coming in blind. So I showed up and basically found a place to sit. I just kind of sat off to the side by myself and was just kind of waiting to see if I recognized anyone, to kind of help help me with, okay, who do I check in with and who do I, and Fatu Rikishi, at the time he was Fatu in the Head Shrinkers, came over to me and introduced himself and was like, hey, you need some help, or did you check in with Tony Gurria yet? And I'm like, oh, is that who I'm supposed to check in with? He's like, oh yeah, so he took me over to the agents and who I needed to check in with, and then he's like, where are you getting dressed? I'm like, I have no idea. He's like, all right, come with me, and he took me into the locker room and he's like, here, you're getting dressed with us, and so I set my bag, next to theirs, and there it was, so then he's like, did you get something to eat? Catering's over this way. He kind of like was pointing me around to where everything was, and helping me out. He's like, if you got any questions, let me know,
Oh.
And so I went over and got some catering, and then I came back to the locker room because I was going to start getting, my boots on and stuff. And as you mentioned, the Nasty Boys, Jerry Sags was in the locker room, and I walked in, and he's like, who the hell are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Steve. I went to introduce myself. He wouldn't shake my hand. He just looked at me. He's like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, I'm getting dressed. He's like, who said you dressed in here? It was like that, and then I was like, Fatu. And he's like, Fatu? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, okay, you're good then, kid. And then he introduced himself, and then, it was just one of those things where they were very protective of their locker room, and so and I get it, and so things are so different now.
Right.
Now the local talent have their own dressing area. They don't dress with the main roster talent. They put them in they'll find a room for them. Sometimes it's a broom closet. Sometimes it's pipe and drape. And then like, there you go. This is for you guys, because, they keep them separate now. But back then everyone was together. And, but that first time, like I said, it was very intimidating. And then, once, Fatu started to show me around, then I started to feel a little more comfortable. And then it just went from there, and then it was, became comfortable and, started to get invited back and doing more events with them. So then it was like, okay, now I was one of the guys that would, if I saw someone that looked lost, that was there, I would help them out, and pay it forward,
Very cool. And one of the weird things I did last year was I had 3 guys in that were in the position of, I don't want to say local talent, maybe I don't want to say jobber because I know that's frowned upon these days as well, but they were in that kind of role. Dusty Wolf, who, by the way, as soon as I said I was from Arizona, he said, you're out near Navajo. So he knew.
I love Dusty. Dusty.
Immediately jumped to you as soon as I said where I was from. And then Barry Horowitz, who's probably the most famous enhancement talent of all time, and a Black Bart who deserved more than he got, for sure, when he was in WWE.
Definitely.
And rest in peace to him, by the way. But yeah, we all talked about the position of WWF enhancement talent. I know you were very young, especially at that time. What was your perspective on your take and how you were treated at that time, and your role, I should say?
Well, I knew exactly what my role was, so it wasn't. I wasn't going in there thinking that I was going to be one of the superstars. I knew, what I was hired for. So I went in there and did the job the best that I could, and my job was to make them look larger than life and make them look as good as I possibly could. And then, it was like, okay, well, if I do well at this, there might be opportunity, since I am young, to, progress. And that actually came to be, Chief Strongbow called me up, and this was when WWF was going to start their light heavyweight division. And at the time that I was doing my first shows, I was roughly about 230, 235 pounds. And when Chief called me up to, talk to me about the light heavyweight division, the first question he asked me, he's like, you still skinny?
Right.
I was like, well, I'm about 265 now. He's like, what? Because I was hitting the gym hard and trying to put some size on. And he's like, all right, well, we're gonna book you for New Mexico, and blah, blah, blah. So it was one of those kind of things. And then I was too big for that division, but they still brought me in to take a look, and we did that. But I was like, damn, why did I? it's all about timing, It's like but I was grateful for that opportunity to be given a look for it, and then when they, had me there next to, Scotty Tuhati and Brian Christopher, those guys that were in that division, it was like, oh yeah, no, we can't. We can't make it work, so.
Was it around that time? And like I said, I did my research a little bit. Was it around that time that Howard Finkel made the flub? Speaking of flubs, that actually gave you your ring name when he called you Navajo Warrior.
It was. It was. Well, that was a little bit later, maybe a couple years later. But yeah, it was to have Howard Finkel give me that name and it be a mistake. I think it's a great story, because
it is. Yeah.
I'm in that dark match and I'm introduced as a Navajo kid, and then when I win the match, he announces, there's your winner, the Navajo Warrior, and I was like, wait a second, I like that,
Very cool. So you probably guessed that I have no Native American blood in me whatsoever, and I was kind of curious of. In the mid-'90s, it kind of became, okay, we need to have a Native American persona. Tatanka, huge gimmick. WCW, Charlie Norris came to mind, and he passed away a few years ago, too. But he often, in fact, I think he sued and won against Turner, but that didn't seem to be that hard to do, that he felt that they were treating Native American talents badly. Was using your actual lineage something that you were proud to do or felt forced to do, or how did you feel about that?
It's something I felt proud to do. And, it's to me, the pro wrestling was always a larger than life characters. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to be like, the wrestlers that I grew up watching. So I thought, well, yeah, if I can use my lineage and use my, as my persona, then why not? Because it's bright colors, and the feather headdress or the wolf skins or whatever I would wear. And so it's something that would make me stand out from a lot of the other wrestlers. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, that's what helped me get a lot of my bookings earlier in my career, was the fact that I was Native American, and wrestling guys, legends like the Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine, mm-hmm. They would always pull me aside after the match and give me tips on how to improve the gimmick, or how to, try different things and see what works for me, because they're like, they've wrestled them all. They've wrestled Tatanka, they've wrestled Chief Jay Strongbow, they wrestled Wahoo McDaniel, so like they would say, Wahoo would do this, you should try that, see how that works for you. It was always something cool. I was taught how to do the Indian Deathlock by Adnan Al-Kaisi, who was
Billy Wow. Yes, sir.
He's like, do you know how to do the Indian Deathlock? I said, I do not. He's like, let me teach you. And I thought that was amazing, that I'm learning from these guys. And
far too many of the guys we're mentioning right now have passed away too, which is horrible.
Sadly.
Yes.
Sadly.
Wow. Well, that was a bummer that I jumped in with that. I'm sorry. Oh, wow. That's really cool. So one of the cool things that I could say that you had an impact on is that if I've gotten my son, who's 15 and way taller than me, and I think every time we go to wrestling shows, I think at least one of the guys is looking at him thinking, we might be able to do something with him someday. He's a big kid, but I got him involved in wrestling because he found the WWE video games, and he loves the games. He watches all the wrestling. He knows stuff that I don't even remember, which is really cool because I remember seemingly everything. But the WWE 2K games have really made an impact, and you're a big part of that. You work for 2K and you help kind of produce the games. What exactly is your role, and how did you get to be part of the 2K system?
So what I do, well, my title is licensing manager of, so I handle the WWE license for the video games, but my role I'm like jack of all trades. I handle scheduling and recording of the voiceover sessions. So with commentary, ring announcers, the wrestlers themselves, when they have voiceover lines in the game, I handle the scans. So when we scan the wrestlers so that they can create their likeness in the video game, mm-hmm. I gather the assets needed for the reference photos for the wrestling gear that they wear in the game, anything that we do with marketing, that we have wrestling talent at, I'm there to handle the talent, to make sure that they get what they need and they're taken care of. So it's a bit of everything, so depending on the time of year, depending on what I'm doing, like right now, we're working on our DLCs for 2K25. So I'm out gathering scans for those, so it's always something, which is great because, it's all part of the game that's really needed, and, but the way I got into it was, at the time that THQ was making the game, the SmackDown versus Raw series.
Yes, sir.
Yuke's was the publisher, which was out of Japan.
Yes.
And THQ was looking to break away from Yuke's and start finding a studio in the States to make the game. So they were using Rainbow Studios, which was in Phoenix, and Rainbow Studios contacted me about doing motion capture. So my very first thing that I did in the world of video games was I was one of the motion capture actors. So I would wear the motion capture suit in the ring doing the moves. And so I did that for a few years. And then they started asking me about, consulting on the game. So then I started doing consulting work. And then I would just book the guys that would do the motion capture. And then the gentleman that does my job, my job that I do now, he was doing it then. Mm-hmm. He wanted to get into design of games. So he asked me if I would be interested in doing what he does. And I was like, well, why did you think of me? He's like, because you know these guys, you work with these guys, you know how to handle yourself backstage. That all of those little things that are needed to do what I do. And so we talked about it, and then I just decided, I'll give it a shot. So then the hiring process started. Then I had to interview at WWE. I had to interview, I think 3 different interviews at WWE, 2 with different group parts of THQ, and then I was brought on board. And then when 2K took over the license, 2K's lead producers and management came and started interviewing the team that worked on the game. And right away, they were like, okay, well, we definitely want to bring Steve on, so they brought me on. And it was just a nice switch over. Like as soon as the license switched over, they brought me on board. And WWE was also telling them, like, you need to have him because our talent is very comfortable with him. Let's try to keep him on board, So then that's how I got in with the 2K team. And so I've been with them ever since. And it's been great. It's definitely a project that I love because it involves professional wrestling. They have a WWE and everything that I wanted to be a part of, one way or another. Even if it's not in the ring, I'm still involved with pro wrestling. So I love it.
That's awesome. And when the game is done, do you ever sit down in front of the TV with a controller and give it a try? And and if so, do you have a favorite that is your favorite of all the ones you've worked on?
I've tried. I have tried. For the life of me, I cannot play. I'm terrible. So, and there are certain parts of the game that I want to get to. When you play through a career mode, or you play through, and I can't get to them because I can't get past the first match, which is sad. So my youngest daughter will play, and she'll get to it for me and show me, oh, here, Dad, here's what you wanted to see, But my favorite was 2K16, and just for the odd reason that that year it was we had Stone Cold Steve Austin on the cover, and so you played through Stone Cold Steve Austin's career, and so a big part of that was when he wrestled Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, and the special referee was Mike Tyson. Mm-hmm. Now, the year that we did 2K16, Mike Tyson signed a deal to do the UFC game. So he could not be licensed to any other games because of that. So we did not have Mike Tyson in that game. We have, we called him the special enforcer referee. So they scanned me. And so I'm actually the special
the referee.
Yeah, I'm Mike Tyson.
Do you get to throw the punch at the end that knocks out Shawn Michaels, or is that part? Oh, you do. Awesome.
Oh, yeah. So I thought that was funny because I had no idea that they were going to do that until they told me, like, oh, hey, here's what your character looks like in the game. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then they told me, like, that's awesome. So that was always going to be my favorite just for that reason. And all the people that play it going, who's this guy? Who's this?
Very cool. So fast forwarding a little bit to modern day wrestling.
Yes.
WWE has got their new program that is signing up a lot of the independent guys. And I've had my kind of viewpoints altered by the opinions of the independent guys. They kind of all say different things. And I'm kind of like, well, one day I'm like, I don't like it. And then I'm like, I like it. What is your opinion of WWE having the program where they could sign, guys that are not quite ready, or maybe they think have something and will be ready soon? What do you think of that program that they're using?
I like it. To me, it reminds me of the way the developmental contracts used to be. Mm-hmm. So back in the early 2000s, before OVW opened, and UPW was considered not even like a territory, but like they would sign guys and they would just do their North shows like normal. So they would wrestle throughout Southern California like they normally do, except now they're getting subsidized. Now they're getting paid from WWE. They never had to go through and okay, oh, hey, I'm wrestling for this promotion. Is that okay? Things like that. They would just wrestle. That way they would keep getting their experience that they needed. And in my opinion, that's kind of a lot of what's happening now with the ID. Like the wrestlers that are signed to it.
ID is the words I was searching for and couldn't come up with, by the way, the ID program. Thank you for that.
So you're welcome. So they're still getting to wrestle their, as their independent shows that they want to wrestle, and they're getting subsidized by WWE, and that money can be used to help them. Like, say they wanted to wrestle, say one of them's based out of Las Vegas, and he wants to wrestle in Florida, and that promoter is like, I can't afford your flight. That they can use that money that they're making from WWE to help cover that flight.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's what that money's to be used for. It's like, hey, this is to help you go out and get more work, get more experience and get more in different places. And so, it's kind of a big help to that wrestler, because now they can go out and wrestle in different places that they really wanted to, that they couldn't before because they couldn't afford it. Now it's money coming out of their pocket to go there, so this way it's something that they can be helped out with. And then they just make sure that they have their matches on video, so that way they're constantly updating their resumes and stuff. So that way the office can watch their matches and see if they're improving, how they're improving, what they need to improve on. They're constantly getting feedback from, producers and agents saying, hey, this is good. Let's try this. Or, which I think is great. It's great for them, and it doesn't hurt. I think a big part of what people are, speculate on is they think it might hurt some of the independents, when it doesn't, because they're still getting to wrestle for them. You're not having to pay them any more than you normally would. You would pay them your normal rate that you would pay someone, and I think a lot of promoters were afraid, well, now they won't lose, no, they'll still, whatever your booking is what your booking is. And that's how they,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's good. I think it's great for the talent. And I also think it kind of helps out the promotions in a way as well, because now you can advertise, hey, WWE ID talent so-and-so is going to be on our show. And people see that WWE logo and it's like, oh, let's go see,
That's important. Yeah. Now let's go check it out.
Yeah.
I agree. All right. Well, a couple more questions if you have time for them.
Of course.
All right. Well, let's take a look here. What do we got in my little bag here? So you mentioned in another interview, and I wrote it down. I kind of jotted down notes while watching it, about the size of wrestlers changing. And that always intrigues me, because when I was a kid, I met Demolition Axe. And I swear to you, he was like a giant. Billy Eadie was huge. His hand reached my elbow when I shook his hand. It was just massive. And now I meet the guys, and I'm about 5'8" or what have you. They're about my size. I'm not really like dwarfed by them. Not just because I'm no longer a kid, but also because the size of the guys has gotten gradually smaller. Why do you think that is? Why has the wrestling industry kind of leaned more towards a smaller, maybe cruiserweight style of wrestling or wrestler?
I think personally, I think it's because of the athleticism. If you have you still have your big guys, but if you notice, those big guys are athletes. Mm-hmm. They can move. I'm not taking anything away from guys like Bill Eadie, like Demolition. Those guys were big. They could move. But I think just in society in general, like humans are getting smaller. I don't see too many big, 6'5", 300-pound men walking around. And back then in the 80s, like you had a lot of them. You had a lot of really big men, and so it's kind of a combination. But I honestly think though it's a lot of if you are an athlete, then they're gonna gravitate towards wrestling, and a lot of them right now are smaller cruiserweight athletes. 220 pounds, 205 pounds. Like 205 live. So it's like they're a lot smaller, but the things that they do in the ring are amazing. So it's not the land of the giants anymore.
That is true. And we do share another thing in common. Probably not alone in this sharing, but Hulk Hogan was a huge influence for me as a kid. 1985, I saw Hulk Hogan for the first time. You said that Hulk in an AWA show kind of lit your fire for pro wrestling. What's your take on the woes of the Hulkster right now with the negative crowd reaction? And as a promoter and somebody who has promoted shows, when you see this guy, they really don't like him. What is your thoughts on that? Or is it a unique situation for Hulk?
Honestly, I think it might be. At first, I was going to say it's kind of a unique situation for him, but I just think people, the wrestling fans now, like your core group of wrestling fans, the age group of them are younger. So, and not to sound negative, but social justice warriors. You know what I'm saying? People that are always looking for a cause, even though it doesn't affect them or doesn't really even matter to them, but they are always looking for a cause, and they always want to. If someone has a flaw or someone makes a statement that it is wrong, they're going to stick to it, and they're going to try to nail this person. The cancel culture. It's big now. So, and I've always been of the opinion that if you cannot find a flaw in yourself, then you can judge others. And I don't know anyone that doesn't have a flaw, that's never made a mistake or that's never slipped and fell, but yeah, unfortunately, I think that, I was at the arena, with that Netflix premiere, and I went out into the arena for his segment because I wanted to feel the
energy.
When they were booing, I found a friend of mine that was there, and I was standing with him. I went over to where he was sitting, and so I was standing with him, and we're both recording it, and we just both looked at each other because he was a longtime wrestling fan. He's like, I cannot believe this. The way they were just booing him, and it was, you heard some cheers, but it was like, no, they were drowning him out, and it was kind of heartbreaking, But I'd like to say that he can come out of it, and it really just depends on what he does, as far as his next move. If it's just pushing his beer, then no, he's not going to come out of it right away. It's going to take a while, But
I agree. And the other thing I thought I had is, when Hogan was riding high, let's say 85, if you take a guy that was, in their prime 40 years prior, like Luthez, and he came out, What would the 85 crowd have done? Would they have cared as much? And I know that's horrible to say because to me, Hulk's larger than life, and we've never really been without him. So it's not like, hey, this is a guy from 40 years ago. This is a guy from, all throughout my life. But yeah. I do wonder, maybe it's just that they know he's not going to wrestle, so maybe they just don't want to hear the promo, and I don't know. It's just, right. I was real disappointed with that. I'll say that. I was kind of bummed.
I was definitely bummed. I was like, I can't believe this is happening, but to see him right afterward, he just took it in stride. He was he didn't say a word about it. He was taking pictures with, he's like Rey Mysterio and all the different, taking pictures with the boys, and he's like, doing his thing, it was just like, it's like, okay, well, this is the way it's going to be. Let's just roll with it.
Yeah, and the cool thing was, I've seen him since at, the political stuff. Won't bring you into that, but he's been, at the Donald Trump stuff and all that, and the crowd seems to love him there. So I guess he still has his audience where it just matters where he plays too. Maybe LA wasn't the right place for it, but there you go. Yeah. All right, well, we're going to wrap up with kind of a softball, and as we're heading into Monster, which I jokingly said was an underrated Kiss record. I love the titles, by the way. You guys use a lot of cool rock and roll references in your titles for sure.
Definitely great. And Greg DeMarco and I, we kind of will spitball ideas, throw ideas that I could forth at each other. But yeah, he comes up with some good stuff, and it's always rock and roll related, in one way or another.
Yeah, I made the reference to Evan Daniels, and it's a great song. And I don't know, and that shows how old I am. I don't know fully that he knew that I was talking about the Motley Crue song, but okay.
Probably not. But when you have Nick Nemeth on the show, you gotta go with the Motley Crue song, So it's like,
yeah, I wore my LA Guns shirt because he rips off. He borrows from the LA Guns logo a lot, Nick Nemeth. So I wore my LA Guns shirt to see if they would get any pop from him. But there you go. So Monster coming up here, just a couple weeks away. If you're facing Frankie Kazarian, what can fans expect heading into this event? Not just your match, but all the other matches heading into IZW Monster.
Oh, they can expect a night of great wrestling action. Monster is our annual. It's like our Royal Rumble. Mm-hmm. So we start off with 2 men in the ring. Then every few minutes, another one comes in. But we go with 13. Lucky number 13 is the last one to come in. Then when you're down to your last 2 opponents and everyone else has been eliminated, it now becomes pinfall or submission. Mm-hmm. So the winner of Monster then has a shot at the title of their choice, and then they can cash that in anytime for the rest of the year. So Monster's always a great show. You get to see great talent, especially in that match itself. You got 13 of the best in IZW competing for that shot at a championship. And then we're also going to have the ladies of IZW. We're going to have, I believe, two women's matches on the card. Mm-hmm. We've got our new tag team champions will just be defending their tag team titles. Our fighting 3D Sports fighting champion, which is a different thing that we've done as well, to where normally anyone can call out their, contenders call out and fight for the championship. This time the champion calls out who their opponent's going to be. So it's the champion's choice, which is something a little different that we've done. But it's going to be great. And then of course myself and Frankie Kazarian are going to go at it. We're going to bring them the best in Arizona versus the king of TNA. So we're going to have a great time.
Sounds like fun. I will be there. I'll be there with bells on. Looking forward to this great event, and I'll have the links to where people can buy tickets. Is there any social medias you wanted to plug as well before we wrap up?
Yeah, IZW Wrestling. That's IZW Wrestling AZ. That's our Instagram. IZWTIX.com goes to our website and also to where you can get tickets for our events. And Navajo Warrior 2K, that's where you can find me on Instagram. And that's usually about where I am, so you'll find me there. And let's see everyone at the matches. See everyone at Monster, February 22nd.
February 22nd, and I'll have the link on the website. I want to thank you for taking the time to do this with me. Hey, in 2005, I'm going to confess this to you. You had Justin Roberts, who now is the AEW ring announcer, done well for himself. Big run in WWE as well. I was dealing with him, and I stood you guys up. And I'll tell you why. I couldn't get anybody to run the console at the ASU radio station. So I was supposed to be helping you guys with something, and I completely no-showed, and I felt like the biggest horse's ass on the planet. So 20 years later, I'm so sorry.
Hey, the apology took 20 years, but we got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't get anybody to run the console for me. And I was like, well, what if I go to the wrestling and you stay here? And my friend's like, I don't think that would work because we need two people to play off each other. Oh, man, it was a nightmare. So if it ever crossed your mind, even at that night, I don't even know if that night it would have mattered to you, but I apologize for that.
Hey, that is all right. Look at that. But hey, you remembered, you apologized, and that's awesome. Because honestly, I don't remember that.
I would be stunned if you did, but there you go. Well, I thank you for taking the time to do this with me, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
All right. I'll let you know when I get this up online, and I'll send you a link to the YouTube and all that good stuff.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
This is Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, Rush.
Featuring the interactive interview.
Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Formerly The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze rock.
Yo, Maniacs, so what you gonna do when the Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
On WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And now we shamelessly name drop from our history.
The Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
All right, everybody. Viva la raza. Viva la raza.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, ladies.
Hey guys, we had a lovely conversation. First lady, absolutely. Oh, look at me. He's so kooky.
Be there. Where else?
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Oh my God, you win! Love being interactive.
I was not shooting. Yeah. I almost missed my fan. Breaking neck. I got 2 words for you. I've heard a lot about you guys. Let's go. I see my language. You're going to go to the shop. Don't be a no. Into the many.
No nerves.
That was great. It's going to be cool. Woo! What it's all about. The purest point of view. The living legend. Champion. Arrogant.
You just make me.
Instead of statement, I'm talking to you.
So lonely without you.
Yeah.
In the land of extreme.
Testify. Nevermore. Interactive interview. I'm not just the best. Interactive interview with a plastic
You
head.
earned the right.
Nobody. You better keep listening. Thank you very much. Controversy creates cash. Professional
Made
wrestling.
in the USA, baby.
Memphis wrestling. The guy on fire.
We were sexy.
What a show.
The one and only.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Interactive interview. We took care of the business. This isn't ballet. We are huge with this whole. You're where it's at. You better recognize who's the best. Make sure you tune in each and every week. I'll come out of your computer. Knock down your door and turn it on for you. Or else I'm going to kick your stinking teeth in. And that's the bottom line. Have a nice day.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.